Danny Podolsky joins us from Boston, East Coast, upper East Coast of the USA, low-kick MMA reporter. Thanks so much for your time, Danny. Welcome to New Zealand.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we've had a couple of days to reflect about that fight. Wow. I mean, that knockout was fantastic, wasn't it?
Absolutely crazy. When you thought Izzy was out of the fight, comes back, right hand, bang, out cold.
So were you expecting that at all? How much of a surprise?
So I personally predicted Izzy to come back and win that fight. I felt like his mentality, just throughout the whole training camp, he really seemed locked in. But the way he finished it with that knockout, that was not how I saw that one going. I thought, he technically outclassed him the way he's done to some other guys like Vittori and Cannonier, but playing positive against the cage and then just that 1-2 put him out cold. That's not how I saw that one going down. But crazy, got the belt back and happy for him.
Yeah, just that actual moment, it looked like he had been trapped on the ropes, Adesanya, and it looked like Pereira was going to take him down. So, look, I mean, it's been called a phantom punch. How did you see it?
Yeah, the way I saw it. So, what people I think are overlooking is the fact that 20 seconds before that, it looked like Izzy's right leg was gone, and it kind of just went a shell up. And we saw technically the third fight, but the first MMA fight, when Pereira had him against the cage, it was able to unload, and it looked like it was, going to be that same flurry of punches, and then Izzy just out of nowhere counter right and just puts him out.
Yeah, and unusual as well for him to knock down, with the hands as well, because you expect him to do a lot more work with his feet.
Yeah, I think Izzy's punching power is chronically overrated, just because, underrated. Because he's in a division where you think about Pereira has this, just behemoth of a left hook, and you have guys like Jared Cannonier who are knocking guys out with one punch, but we look at the first Whitaker fight, and Izzy was that 1-2 puts him out. Paulo Costa, guy who'd never been knocked out cold by that left hand of Adesanya. I think because of how technical Izzy is, people overlook his punching power and see him as just a kickboxer, and you can't. That really showed, you can't get lazy even for a second when you're fighting Israel Adesanya.
So what happens from here now? Danny Podolsky is with us. Yeah, I mean, is there a trilogy, or does Pereira go up a weight division? What do you think will happen?
I think Alex Pereira should move up to 205. We're talking about 2 weeks out prior to this fight. They were already showing Pereira cutting weight. I think, it's not to say he can't make 85. I think when you're cutting that much weight that early into a fight camp, it takes away a little bit of the focus of actually training for the fight. And I think, the best thing for him to do is to move to 205. And you already have that storyline, because with Glover Teixeira losing to Jamal Hill, I think you could, if Yuri Prochazka is not ready yet from that shoulder injury, I think you could book Pereira versus Jamal Hill, for probably the end of 2023. And I think you already have that storyline of Pereira trying to get the revenge for his mentor Glover Teixeira. So I think Pereira should move up. For Izzy, Izzy's been one of the most active champions since he got the belt back, and he's really cleared out the division at this point. We're talking the top guy in terms of rankings who he hasn't fought is Dricus Du Plessis. Du Plessis has, looked great, but he's still, I think, at least one more fight away from getting that title shot. You could give it to Hamzat, but it's kind of hard to reward Hamzat after he missed weight against, he's supposed to fight Diaz, became Kevin Holland. So I think it's tough to give Hamzat that shot right now. And I just think Israel Adesanya has earned himself, the right to take some time off. I think for Pereira, the best thing for him to do is to move up to 205. And I think you already have that storyline, heading into the fight if you book him against Jamal Hill.
This guy, Dricus Du Plessis, and of course, waging a war as they do these days across Instagram and mouthing off and, making comments and insults and all of that kind of stuff, obviously to try and sort of lure him out. Is there any possibility of that fight?
There's certainly a possibility of it, because if you go down the rankings right now, it's, Izzy's champion, then everyone 1 through 5, Israel Adesanya has already beaten, in some cases beaten multiple times. The thing with Dricus Du Plessis is I just think he has 5 UFC fights right now, and I just think in terms of trying to sell that fight, I think it's a tough it's a tougher sell. When you're Israel Adesanya, I think Izzy's a guy who is looking for, he's always looking for the toughest test. And I feel like, that was Alex Pereira. I just feel like Dricus du Plessis, Derek Brunson's a great finish. He's knocked out guys like Brad Tavares, Darren Till, but I just think he still needs one more win to get himself into that title picture. If you're looking at a different division where the champion hasn't cleared out that division yet, the number 6 guy isn't usually getting that title shot. I think Dricus du Plessis certainly could get a title shot in the future. I think he needs at least one more. Or I think he needs, probably one more win to get himself that shot.
Danny Podolsky, Low Kick MMA reporter. He's based in Boston with us on the platform. So if Israel Adesanya, I mean, if he does take a holiday, does take some time off, I mean, obviously it's always difficult to come back from that. But as you say, who does he fight? He went up a division and he just got kind of sat on, didn't he, in that fight? I mean, is there a possibility that he may look at that again?
I think it's certainly possible. And Jan Blachowicz actually made a post the other day talking about he could move down to 85. So I think if Blachowicz moves down to 85, maybe he picks up a win there, and then they run him back in middleweight. I think if Izzy moves up to 205, though, he's got to do it. I'm going to phrase it like this. He's got to do it the right way. It's not to say he did it the wrong way the last time, but I think against Blachowicz, he came in severely undersized for that fight. Blachowicz is a guy who was a big 205er for that fight, probably came in that fight 220, 225, and Izzy weighed in around 200. That was probably close to his fight weight for that fight. If you look at what John Jones did, John Jones moved up to heavyweight and put on, 20, 30 pounds so he could, be a part of that division. And I think if Izzy's going to move up to 205, not to say he can't do it, I just think he should really put on the weight and be a 205er, not a 185er is moving up because he's cleared out his division.
Danny, how is he looked at in terms of your audience, Israel Adesanya? What do people think of him? Do they like him? Do they love him? What?
Very polarizing. I think you have two sides. I think the hardcore MMA fans love him. I'm personally a massive fan of his. I have, for what my opinion's worth, like I've, loved this guy since he got to the UFC. I think some of the more casual audiences here have just seen some of his last few fights before this one. I think the Jared Cannonier one specifically at, International Fight Week, where he kind of just played it safe. And I think for a lot of the fans who don't watch, or maybe aren't like hardcore fans, more of the casual fans, will look at a fight like that and say, all right, it was a boring fight. I think after that knockout, I think all the Izzy haters, have kept quiet, and all the Izzy fans have really, really made it clear that he's their guy. Israel Adesanya, regardless of his antics, he's pretty well liked here. He's not, it might not be like the most beloved guy. He's not, but I think just with his story, born in Nigeria, moved to New Zealand, obviously is beloved where you guys are. I still think for the most part, there are more Israel Adesanya fans than there are Israel Adesanya haters in America.
The guy is he's just trying to prick him with this idea that, hey, you're not a real African fighter. You're fighting out of New Zealand, despite the fact that Israel was born in Nigeria, and just trying to rile him up that way. How do American fight fans see him? Do you see him as a New Zealand fighter or an African fighter?
I personally see him as a, I think most Americans see him as both. I think they see him as, I think when Usman and Ngannou were also champions, it was cool to say we had three African champions. And then, in the context of looking at Volkanovski, Dan Hooker, all the guys at City Kickboxing, I think from the fight standpoint, they see him as this New Zealand guy. I think Israel Adesanya, I think he plays to his sort of New Zealand personality more. I think just in terms of his training and the guys who he's backing, his fighters, his friends, guys like Dan Hooker, Volkanovski, Kai Kara-France, they're all they're all the guys from. They're not guys from Africa. They're guys from New Zealand and Australia. I think. I it's weird because in America, I think he's kind of looked at as born in Nigeria and an African champion, but Israel Adesanya, the fighter, was made in New Zealand.
So in the end, how's he going to go down? Do you expect to see him to fight again, or do you think that, as you say, he's going to take some time off? And how has this finally been reported in America, just in terms of MMA circles? What's been the reaction to that fight?
I think he'll take some time off. I think we'll see him by the end of the year, but probably November, December of the year. And it's being reported as he finally overcame his villain. The guy who beat him 3 times. The boogeyman he couldn't get past finally knocked him out. I think if you want to run that trilogy, you can run it. If Pereira stays at 85, maybe if Duplessis picks up a win or Hamzat picks up a win at 85, he gets another title shot. But I think in terms of the media over here, it's all praise right now for Israel Adesanya. And I think if he wants to take some time off, I think he's totally earned it.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for your time, Danny. Great talking to you, mate.
Of course, always a pleasure, and have me on anytime.